Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbett, the scientist turned mindset and high-performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. Today's guest is Patrick Noel Daly, a true serial entrepreneur. From inventing a school bag that won him Ireland's Young Entrepreneur of the Year at 19, to founding startups in IT, SaaS, and medical innovation, to now mentoring the next generation through his global PND Entrepreneurship Academies, Patrick has spent decades turning ideas into impact. And what's maybe most interesting about him isn't just his success, it's his mindset. Because Patrick believes that building products should be focused on something that's good for people. He believes that innovation should heal, not harm, empower, and not exploit. And that's exactly the mindset that I think we need to encourage in the next generation of entrepreneurs. So welcome, Patrick, and thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you, Claudia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Looking forward to this. So, Patrick, you started making money at the early age of 12, mowing lawns for your elderly neighbors, I read.
Yes.
So, what did that early exchange of value teach you about work and purpose?
It was really the first time that I took that energy and put it into what I saw as two things. One, doing favors for elderly neighbors, and two, then receiving payment or reward for doing that. Because I was so happy when I got when I did my first, let's say, gardening job. And I got this crisp note of money, and I was saying, hey, I've just made my own money. I don't have to ask my parents for money at the end of the week and so on, And it just felt so satisfying that I was doing those two things. And it's funny how things happen, because at that young age, my weekends then were becoming more and more full, because the most powerful method of marketing maybe, and still is, I believe, is reference and word of mouth. So one person talked to the other, and the other person talked to the other, and then I was getting new jobs coming in. And but I really, really felt that it was like my entrepreneurship start. I think that was the seed of entrepreneurship going forward.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I started early too.
Yeah.
Now, you have said that entrepreneurship was kind of in your DNA because of your family's engineering background. Do you believe that this is literally in your DNA as a sort of personality wiring, or is it a way of thinking and maybe a skill that can be developed by anyone?
I love this question because it's been talked about so much from the theory side of things and the practical side of things. And I believe it's probably a mix.
Yeah, I
We
agree.
need to have like the genetic seed in our makeup, in our DNA. We need to then be surrounded by people who are entrepreneurship minded, or entrepreneurial in the way they do things. But I think it's a mix, and it's how we evolve that entrepreneurial thinking, I think, is critical. And what I do a little bit, I mentor in the last few years, you mentioned in your introduction, and I like to now take the actual practical entrepreneurship piece and try and merge that in with the kind of academic entrepreneurship training in universities and colleges and so on. So it's a mix. I think it's a mix of that genetic makeup as well as the surroundings and environment and education and all of those factors that encourage entrepreneurship, because it's very, very easy to be discouraged in the entrepreneurship space because it's difficult. It's not an easy place to be. Entrepreneurship and startups and startup businesses are great places to be when things are going well. They're not so great places to be when things are not going well. And in many cases, you will get many more times than you will hear yes when you're trying to sell or offer your service. So it takes resilience, but I think all of that building environment is necessary to get people to succeed and to help people to succeed.
Yeah, I really think you need to cultivate a special entrepreneurial mindset. So, how would you explain this entrepreneurial mindset? What are some of the big lessons that you have learned along the way?
How would I explain the mindset? I think
Yeah,
it's a
what's
curiosity. It's a problem-solving thing. You
mm-hmm.
know, my core mindset, I guess, was always there has to be a better way to do this.
Hmm.
And that was, I think, the innovation mindset. I would look at something, and when I took my first job in a multinational company, I was, a simple production operator in a factory, but I kept engineering solutions. And the managing director, the boss, would come down every morning, shake hands, and say, "Good morning, how are you doing?" And I go, "Hey, listen, while you're here, I've got an idea." And he just knew that I was an idea generator. And I said, if we did this, this, and this, then we could improve the machine so that it gets faster and our output increased. We went from while I was on that specific machine, it went from 350 units an hour to 620 units an hour because of the ideas.
Ooh.
So he was my buddy after a while, he was coming down going, any ideas today kind of thing. And I think those ideas, it's great to have ideas, but you need to register the fact that you're getting those ideas and you need to make those ideas work. And that's why building the environment around it. And he was a real kind of inspiring character as well, because he was very person oriented and he was people oriented, and he was genuinely curious to understand how things could be developed. But I think the curiosity factor is something that we need. And then having the energy and the drive to see it through. That's
Mm.
the key aspect as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It all starts with the curiosity and then it's creative problem solving
Yes,
all day long.
absolutely. Or maybe firefighting, or maybe just fixing. All those things happen as well.
True. Now,
Yeah.
many entrepreneurs are driven by pain as much as they are driven by purpose. Was there ever a point in your journey when the weight of entrepreneurship almost made you walk away? And if so, what kept you in the game?
Wow. I think in life, yeah, because entrepreneurship as let's say, a business or a profession can sometimes eat into your personal life and
Mm-hmm.
can impact your personal life very strongly. And probably in a not so distant past, I would have had, personal challenges that would have made me say, okay, do you walk away? I'd never asked that question of myself. But what I did instead was I said, take a break, recharge, step out of the ring for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and step out of the kind of battles of entrepreneurship, because in many cases you are battling, like with a startup idea, you're taking it from an idea, from a concept to a reality. And that initial phase, which I'm going to say typically, let's say it's the first year, because I see the first year as being the most critical part. In that first year, you're battling, you're constantly pushing this big, heavy rock uphill. And I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
discourage people. I want to encourage people to get into entrepreneurship. But the key factor is make sure that your road and your choice and your plan incorporates your personal life properly and adequately and sufficiently. Because if you do 90% business and 10% personal life, that can have an impact on your overall health and well-being. And
Sure.
it's not worth that pain as far as I'm concerned. You have to keep some degree of balance. I also think that before you start, bring your family, your close friends, your close team, let's call it, around you, and explain what you're about to do, and try and give them the vision for the business and say, this is where I want to take it. It's going to take a lot of my time. It's going to take a lot of my energy. And, are you on board with this? And ask that
Mm.
question from the beginning. So there's no, secondary questions 6 months in or 3 months in or whenever, just know from the very start, this is my plan. I've shared it with the key people in my life. And if they're all on board, then I can go and I can hit the gas and make it happen.
Mm.
Um, so all those, I think the health and wellness aspect of entrepreneurship needs to be really recognized probably a little bit more, because we think about entrepreneurship straight off the bat and we say, okay, it's all about success, it's all about money, it's all about achieving, it's all about bringing our ideas to life. but we also have to, we rely on our, what I call our machine, which is our mind and body and wellness.
Mhm.
If that machine is not working properly, then it's going to be more difficult and sometimes impossible to achieve what you set out to achieve in the first place. So be mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and uh, be fit, and also have the team, and I call it the team, have the team on board and signed off on what you're about to do. That usually is my prescription nowadays if I'm advising entrepreneurs. Get all those pieces together.
Yeah, it's really so important because if you break your body while you're trying to achieve success, you won't be able to enjoy it if you reach it.
Exactly. Or if you get to I see so many people putting energy into a lot of things. And when I started with my first business, I wasn't very good at delegating. And honest, the majority of entrepreneurs don't delegate well in their first, maybe second businesses. But I learned very quickly that if I don't delegate, I'm not going to get this done.
Yes.
So I went from me with an idea up to like 50 people very quickly. And we were generating seven-figure revenues. We were doing well. We got a national contract. We were granted number one in our space very, very quickly.
Nice.
But if I didn't learn to delegate really quickly, I wouldn't have been able to achieve that. And in the first, like maybe mini business that I call I had, that I say I had, I wasn't delegating enough. And when I went to the second, and that came to that kind of like was a hobby business. So it was a good
Mhm.
learning ground. And I learned to get ready for the bigger business. When I got into the bigger business, my first word was team and delegation. Because people ask me the question, oh, what's your favorite product that you've developed, or what's your favorite invention that you've come up with? And I say it's not really about the product, it's about the people involved. Um,
Mhm.
you can have the best super duper product ever, and if the team is not fully behind it, or if they're not the correct team, it's going to be a challenging road to get that up to full success. You can have a mid-range product with an excellent team, the correct team, and that road's a lot easier. So
Mhm.
team and people and enthusiasm and drive and vision from the founder. It's our job to drive that vision, to tell people, to get people to believe. Because in a lot of cases we're like the visionary kind of like, let's look way down the road and give that vision and show people where we could go. Because that is the motivator sometimes, especially if you have disappointments along the way in business. You have to remotivate, and you have to keep that motivation, that energy, and that fire burning. So many aspects to it there.
Yeah, so many. It's like
Yeah,
all the
so
ducks
many.
that you have to get in a row to make it
Yes,
work.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, you have been through multiple eras of innovation, if you want, from physical inventions to SaaS to medical. What's the common thread that connects all of those ventures beneath the surface? Is there
Um,
one?
two words: market need.
Hmm.
There has to be a need for what you're doing. I see so many startups nowadays and entrepreneurs with great attitude, smart people, um, but they're pointing at a market with a product or a solution that the market either doesn't really want or is not going to be as big as they think. And that's a
Mm.
lot of energy and drive and effort going into trying to put a product out there that's round peg, square hole. It's really not fitting, or the demand isn't as strong. So my first step and my first piece of advice is validate your market. And don't
Mm.
just go up and say, okay, I'm going to do a focus group, or I'm going to do a survey, and I'm going to ask you if you would like to buy my product. Because people will go, yeah, it's nice, maybe I will. Yeah, I probably would. But there's a big difference between that and saying, okay, how much is it? And here's my money. You
Yeah.
know, that's a real validation. Because unless
Mhm.
people are willing to pay you for what you're offering, um, they're really not a customer. They're maybe a pretend customer or possible customer. So get customers, get sales. For me, I call it the bread and butter business. Maybe that's the Irish way of putting it from my home country. But I call it bread and butter business. Do you have a product that people want and that people need? Number one, and then will they pay you their hard-earned money for the product? That's validation. If you have
Mhm.
that, then you have a scalable, saleable product. and that's key.
So would you encourage them to build this minimal viable product first and get it validated? So what would those first steps look like? What would you advise them
My
to do?
first steps would be, even before I make the MVP, the minimum viable product, I'll talk to key potential customers, and I will say, if I made this, would it work or would you buy it? Invariably, you'll find, and I found with my products, because I find that sometimes the customers, the product users, are the best designers, because they're using products every day. And if I say, I'll typically go in and say, okay, see that product you're using there. And this can be a service as well. This is not just product. Could I improve on that? Or what are the downsides of that product? What are the ups and downs of that product or that service? And it's our job then, as a founder or the inventor or the innovator, to listen to what they're saying on the lines, but also read between the lines, because sometimes they can't articulate and they can't say in words what they actually want. But it's our job to determine and decipher what exactly do they mean by this. And then if you get that right, and thankfully I've had very good experience, successes with that. I come back maybe 12 months later, depending on the complexity of the product. Typically I will take a few months though, and I will come back with a prototype, an initial prototype. And I will say, is this kind of what you're looking for? And they'll say, okay, tweak this. It could be perfect, and that would be great. They might say, tweak it a little bit, and then it's ready. There are two key advantages with that. You know that there is a market for your product, so there is a market need. And secondly, then you have customer channels that are your champions, because they've been involved in, let's say, psychologically involved in developing the product, or actually involved in developing the product. So when you're trying to scale sales, and when you're trying to drive sales, reference value, again, I come back to that reference value factor. When I go back to my gardening days, the reference value is very, very important. I think, we're living in a social media world and everything is like, online and digital now. But if I'm going to make a significant purchase, I'll usually look for somebody who knows somebody, or somebody who can give me a reference. And my product values have been fairly high, so reference values is super important.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, you always ask your friends and family, like, what can you recommend, right? You do.
Really do. You go back to basics, which is, hey, can you recommend something? Or I'm about to buy this. Do you know anybody who's bought it and uses it? Can you give me a reference? And I think that human to human factor is always going to be necessary.
Yeah, and especially in times like these with AI and bots on the internet, you never know who you can trust, like online, but you can always trust your friends and family. Well, most
Absolutely.
times.
I call it the HI factor. We can't lose the HI, which is human intelligence. We have to keep that. And human intelligence in deciphering and determining and our everyday life, but determining which product suits you. And human intelligence in general, we need it. We need to keep it.
Yeah, we better keep that.
Yeah.
You build products that are good for people. So that's not a phrase that most founders would lead with. Where did that sense of moral responsibility toward innovation come from?
I think from the very outset, the satisfaction that you get as an entrepreneur or an innovator or inventor of seeing that your product works, and not just works, but does good for people. It multiplies the happiness factor from an inventor's perspective. And I wear a lot of hats. I wear an inventor hat sometimes, where I go off to my quiet place and just invent and write patents and stuff like that. And then I'll come back and I'll wear the kind of motivator, visionary hat for the business to get it up and running. But when I wear the inventor hat, I think about solutions that people need, people want. And then if you think this is going to be good for people, this is going to be good for society, and leaving that kind of legacy of invention in society for not just my lifetime, but for generations to come, is a very satisfying thing. And I don't do it from an ego or a kind of a selfish perspective. I do it from the point of view of, it's like kind of like winning in a sport or something like that, where you have that victory factor in your head and you kind of
Mm.
go, okay, I've done this. And it's not only, technically and financially feasible and viable, it's also very good for people. So meshing all those things in there. And I think the priority has changed a little bit with me as my career has advanced. I now focus on things that are good for people a little bit more. As I find that if you focus on when I was a young entrepreneur, everything had to be, it was like, oh, let's do this. Let's take over the market overnight and we want to do everything today.
Uh-huh.
Now I look at it and say, okay, hold on, there's a realism factor coming in here. And the realism for me and the realistic factor is when I develop products that are good for people, there's a lifetime of satisfaction in that because
Mm.
it's there for
Mhm.
the lifetime. It's there for and longer, I hope. Um, so does that answer your question?
Yeah,
I probably gave you three answers in that in that answer again.
but I think that this is such an important mindset shift because a lot of founders, they really just focus on profit, and not a lot of them, or maybe still the minority of founders, focus on really developing something that's good for people and good for society. Because I think a lot of them are scared that maybe if they do, they might not be as profitable. So what would you say in a world obsessed with growth and valuation? How do you design a business that's focusing on healing rather than harming without sacrificing scale or profitability?
I think if you design something that's healing and good for people, the profitability comes naturally. It
Hmm.
doesn't really, if you go thinking, okay, I'm making it for, €10 and I have to sell it for 25 or €30, if you're thinking on that accounting financial baseline, then yeah, you'll sell some and you'll make profit. But if you think if I make a product that is good for people, and if we're smart about the commercial part, the financial part, then we're still making a margin.
Hmm.
But the mindset is different. The mindset is we're putting a product out there that is good for people. And that's a genuine factor. That's not just a marketing line to get sales. But if it's good for people, invariably, it's going to sell really, really well. It's kind of like giving and receiving. One of my posts on LinkedIn a few months ago was giving generously usually gets the greatest return. So
Hmm.
if you start on a day saying it's all for me and I'm going to get up and I'm going to make a bunch of money today, all for me and my company. Yes, we have to make business. It's business. So we have to make a commercial return. We have to make it commercially sensible. But if you start with, I'm going to put a product out today that is good for people, that people need, people want, and people will buy. The invariable situation are the most likely, probably 99 times out of 100, people are going to buy that product. So the numbers come back and the financial justification is clear. But it's a mindset, and I think it's that good factor. I don't like the idea of the type of entrepreneur or type of business person who gets up in the morning having to take the food off somebody's plate. You
Exactly,
know,
right?
you
Hmm.
need to say, I'm going to make new food for
Hmm.
everybody.
Hmm.
And if that attitude was propelled into society, this would be a better place to live. And I think it's slowly coming around, but it needs more. Society needs more of that kind of thinking. And when I teach entrepreneurship or when I mentor businesses now, and I see, the hungry typically young entrepreneur coming in going, yeah, I got to do this and I got to make this and I got to make that and I got to take over the world and this kind of stuff. I'll go, okay, let's do this bite by bite, because I remember when I was in my second business, it's probably mid-20s. I was running around trying to get everything done, keeping all these plates spinning. And I was down in the west of Ireland, and I sat I sat by a bar in the evening, 8 o'clock finish. I thought finish, but until 10 o'clock I was on my phone, and there was this old man sitting in the corner, and he was like listening to me or looking at me on my phone for 2 hours. This was like 10:15 when I finished, and he said, young man. He said, I have a little bit of advice. And I said, yes, what? And he said, you can only eat so much. And what he was saying was like, you can work all day long, you can make,
Yeah.
massive, massive amounts of money, but at the end of the day, you can only eat so much. You need so much. No, I'm not saying that we should live on the basics, that we love to succeed, and as humans, we have a yardstick of success, which is a lot of the time made on the money scale. And it's good to have that scoreboard. It's good to have those results. But if you can do it with the positive, people-driven, people-focused mindset and have that financial success as well, it's a win-win.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder that there is this inverted U shape. So more money does not equal more happiness. At some point, you have everything you need, and more money won't make you any happier.
Absolutely, absolutely. Or if you can like sit down, let's say every 10 years and say, okay, my last 10 years, what did I achieve? Like you can look at your bank account and say, yeah, what you do, great stuff, amazing result. But if you say, I developed 4 products that have like helped people's healthcare, or whatever the contribution is, and
Mm,
I've made some money while doing it,
so
then
much better.
that to me that's a good formula.
True. Yeah. Now you have the systems that encourage daily innovation. What's one small habit or maybe a question that you ask yourself or your team each day that reliably triggers new ideas?
Innovation is a mindset. So
Mhm.
in the people in the businesses that I've had, the business that I have now, I say it's not about getting an idea. It's about always thinking about ideas. And I'm not saying that we have to be completely fixated on, idea generation, but it doesn't matter whether you are, it doesn't matter the job position, or the role you have in the business. Think innovation. How can I improve this? How can I make this better? Because the knock-on effect of your thinking is going to have a beneficial effect on the entire business.
Mhm.
And saying to somebody, let's think innovation. Let's think every single aspect of what we do. How do we innovate? How do we get it done? How do we make it better? Um, and then the second aspect of that is rewarding innovation.
Mm.
If
Mhm.
somebody comes up with a great idea, in some cases, unfortunately, human nature will see somebody coming up that is maybe, you have this introverted type who comes up with a great idea, and then you have maybe an extroverted type who says, "Oh, I had this amazing idea," and the person who generated the idea in the first place didn't get the credit. I think it's really, really important to acknowledge ideas, acknowledge idea generation, and put those on, let's say, paper, and let it be clear that the idea generator came up with the idea, number one, but is rewarded.
Mhm.
And what I like to do as well is the teams that I put in place in the past were always like shareholders and got pieces of the pie when we win, and shared results. I think that shared aspect is very, very important. But I think in the innovation side, innovation is a mindset. Keep thinking innovation. How can I improve? But this is an
Mm.
everyday life thing as well for me, because I would say, like I said, how can I make this better? Is probably my fundamental saying.
Yeah.
Innovation, mindset, and reward key.
Yeah, I think this, how can I make this better, is the central question that
Yeah.
just helps innovation on a daily basis. So speaking of a daily base, what is your set of maybe say daily success habits? Do you have a stack of success habits that just helps you stay happy, healthy, and productive? Because I'm a huge habit person, so
Yeah.
I love to learn about other people's habits. I'm
Yeah.
curious to hear yours.
No, there's definitely habits. I probably put them more into habits as I evolved and got a bit more mature in my career, because at the start it was like running around everywhere. It was like 5 a.m. start and 11 p.m. finish. So I think now early start is important, because
Mhm.
for me, if I get the first 2 hours, sometimes I'll wake at like 4 a.m. or something like that, and I'll get an idea that I have to develop, or I think something needs across the world urgency, and time zones are a challenge. I'll be awake at 4, and I could I could be finished then by like 9 a.m., if I
Mhm.
start at 4, because I've got all of that work done in time spaces and time gaps that aren't going to be um, demanding from other parts of the world or from other parts of the day. But even in a standard day, let's say the nine to five day, I would have got up, I would have started the day at 7, because the 7 to 9 window before everybody else comes in or before the world comes at you is a good time zone or a good time frame to get all things mapped out. And anything that needs to be done, to get it done in that 2 hour window or 3 hour window if you're in the morning. The second aspect is I think being able to look ahead, being able to say, what I've got today, is that where I want this to be in 6 months from now, in 12 months from now? And particularly with startup entrepreneurs, we're so busy, we're focused on today. But I think visualize where it's going to be in 6 months. If you're developing just even on a standard day, say, where do I want to be in 6 months in my career? Where do I want my business to be in 6 months? Where do I want my product to be in 6 months? And thinking those timelines, and I kind of map those down. I will just go for a walk, find a small cafe somewhere and sit and write down my 6 month plan. Where is this going to be in 6 months' time? Visualize forward. Dream, we're good dreamers. Entrepreneurs are good dreamers. Dreams create the future. And when you dream and say, imagine if I thought, let's say we're launching a product, I want it to be at X in sales in 6 months' time. But sometimes dreaming optimistically is a major motivator for you as the driver of the business, because you're saying, okay, if I brought this, that would be great. But if I multiply that by 2, that would be even better. Why don't I just dream a little bit? And then I typically go into the kind of what if sales are either like half or they're multiplied by 4. And that's the operational thinking. So kind of thinking at worst case, expected case, best case scenario. And I find that model works for me, irrespective of what I'm doing, whether it's life or business. I kind of think of that. I don't want to sound fatalistic. I don't want to sound like doom and gloom with the worst case scenario, but you have to put safety nets in place. When I mentor startups now or startup entrepreneurs, I say, put your safety net in place just in case. Just in case it doesn't happen like you thought. Just in case you don't get the sales. Just in case you don't get launched on time. What's your safety net? And make sure that safety net is solid.
Yeah, that's really important. But also sometimes growth can be a real challenge, right? If your sales have like 10 times more than you expected, that can be a real challenge.
Yeah, exactly. I mentioned that national contract that we got.
Yeah.
And we had like 6 weeks to Christmas, and we had to provide product for the entire country in 6 weeks, which would ordinarily have done, that would have been 6 months' work. So I brought the team. I think there was probably maybe 35 people at that stage. And I brought them around and said, look, we've won the national contract, which is a major plus, a major bonus, and a huge boost for our company, for everyone here. But I need you guys to be here for like not just 8 hours a day. I need you to be here like for 12, 15 hours a day sometimes to get this done. And everybody just came behind it. The motivation factor was there. And I said, just tell your families that I'm probably not going to see you between now and Christmas. And we got it. We nailed it. We closed the contract. We got it on time. We had a good Christmas party that year.
I hope you did.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So last but not least, where can our listeners find you online if they would like to learn more about you or connect with you?
The best way to get me is either probably on my website, which is patricknoeldaly.com, or you can get me on LinkedIn as well, Patrick Noel Daly. The Noel is Noel in the middle, so Patrick is standard and Daly is Daly, but I'm sure all the details are going to be on your website anyway. Yeah,
will be in the show notes. Perfect. So Patrick, thank you so much for talking and for sharing your wisdom with us today. This was fun.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Have a great day.
Yeah, keep up the great work. Take care and talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show or share it with a friend. That way you can support the show and help me reach and support other entrepreneurs like yourself as well. If you would like my help to figure out how you can go from overwhelmed and overworked hustler to empowered and confident leader, check out my website at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions and book a free 20-minute strategy session with me. Can't wait to help you get wired for success. Until next time, take care. Bye.